Welcome to Getronics webinar on proactive analytics and customer care. Today I'd like to introduce Alf Melin and Dimitri Van Kett, two of our global experts who've been working with analytics tools and proactive tools for some years. Getronics have been providing workspace services for many years, and with Global Workspace Alliance we're recognized as one of the premier providers. Workspaces don't stand still. Businesses' requirements change, and Getronics continues to innovate our solutions and capabilities to both recognize that change and in many cases, just try and lead it and improve things as we go. We saw the opportunity to dramatically improve our end users' experience by adding proactive analytics into our standard solution. And over the past years, we've integrated this and taken it global. Today, we want to introduce you to the advantage of proactive services. And with that, I'd like to hand over, first of all, to Dimitri.
Thank you, Martin. Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending. Let's take a moment to look at IT support in 2015. The IT infrastructure has evolved from on-premise office users with physical equipment to mobile users wanting access to their data everywhere and using virtualized and/or cloud-based solutions on corporate and owned devices. So it's needless to say, this adds a lot of complexity to nowadays IT management. IT support has to be able to efficiently and effectively support its users, but can we? Let's think about some of the challenges that IT managers are facing. Do you have a real-time view on end-user devices, so you are fully aware at all times what issues the end user is facing? Are you able to manage your environment end-to-end, including the end-user devices? And how sure are you that your end users have not altered their initial standard installation of their devices and added tools and applications to it? You surely have a view on the number of licenses you use, but do you also know who uses which tool exactly, when, and for how long? Looking at transformation projects, these are major projects like OS upgrades, rollout of Office 365 or virtualization. Do you know upfront for which user the implementation will succeed or fail? And wouldn't it be nice to know this? So you understand that we are focusing on the end user and our customer on the business side. So only by doing so and by understanding the worries of the end users, IT can really be ready for business IT collaboration. If we analyze traditional IT support, it's reactive and it's delivered bottom-up starting from the back end. There is no end-user view or monitoring. The reasoning is if the back end and the network are stable and are performing well, then the end user shouldn't have a problem. Unfortunately, this direct link between the infrastructure status and the end user status does not exist in reality. End users do face issues even if the infrastructure is running smoothly. We even observe that on average, end users are 4 to 5 times more impacted by issues than what is being reported to the service desk. The Gartner study shows that 80% of the security threats, 50% of performance issues, and in fact 70% of all the IT effort is directly linked to the end users, and the yearly cost of this surpasses €300 on average. The solution Getronics proposes is to address IT support top-down, starting from the end user. We will provide the ability to monitor end users in detail by collecting over 480 parameters from their devices in real time. This will effectively provide a full end-to-end view, and Getronics will offer automatic analysis and trending on this data, and we will keep this data for at least 3 months so we are able to analyze the past just if it were today. Focusing on problem management, everyone knows that this is extremely important, but the big issue of problem management in reality is how to correlate the incidents. The Proactive Workspace solution provides automatic correlation, thereby significantly boosting problem-solving ability and enabling far better categorization and impact analysis. This in its turn will enable very fast root cause analysis. This Proactive Workspace solution can be installed in only 3 to 6 days and already yields results after 2 to 4 weeks of data collection. And with this, I'd like to hand over to Alf, who will look at this in more detail.
Thank you, Dimitri. Thinking about how problem management works, everybody operates with limited resources, and it is impossible to investigate everything. This is particularly true in today's environment of rapid change. In practice, then, there is a detection threshold below which problem management will not engage with an issue. At any given time, the top 5 or top 20 issues may be looked at, but others are not investigated in depth. In this traditional model, issues can be broken down into 3 broad categories. Alpha are the high hitters, rapidly going from 0 to high volume. You'll know about them because the service desk is buckling under a load of inbound calls. They tend to get a lot of resource, perhaps disproportionate resource, and they go away rapidly, but the damage is done. The beta category is the bread and butter of gradually emergent issues. They remain below detection threshold for an extended time period, only getting detected once a significant number of incidents have been logged. The response tends to be slower, so it may take weeks or months to get a fix out, but eventually they do get eliminated. And finally, the gammas are the multitudes of marginal issues which have a low volume well below detection threshold. These form part of the background noise. They never get detected, they never get dealt with. Now, in the next generation model, we move away from looking at incidents. We no longer do a multiple matching analysis on a 6-month historical data set, but instead we look at system events in near real time. By removing this reliance on incidents, not only do we get faster with the ability to react before there's any incident logged at all, we can also act with more accuracy and confidence. The detection threshold shifts down to very near 0. I really cannot stress enough how transformative this is. If you think about an iceberg analogy, where most of the map is underwater, we can now see below the waterline. So let's look at the real-world example. Here, we can see the old perspective at the top of the slide with just 4 incidents logged by different users. The quality and consistency of logging was good enough that we could match them, but in the traditional world, this was well below the detection threshold in the context of a large client with a high volume of incidents, so it would just never get looked at. With the new tools, methods available to us, there is a new perspective instead. We can see that 72 users experienced a failure. There was 101 crashes in just 7 days. And this was impacting their ability to complete a very specific task. Now, only 1 out of 18 users reported the issue, with another 68 suffering in silence, perhaps spending time to find alternate solutions rather than focus on their real day job. Further, we could also see 3,266 problem systems that were exposed to the same failure mode. Now, this reveals the true impact and risk to the business and shows that despite the low incident count, this was an issue that needed to be addressed by problem management as high priority. I would stress as well, this is not just limited to crashes and hangs. So we can see a wide range of events, including high utilization of CPU and memory, network response times, failed connections, boot time, application start time, and many others. Currently, we're looking at, for a single client, 100 million events every 2 weeks. We have a vast amount of data available to us. Problem management and our team, they really have an unprecedented insight into the end-user computing experience now, and they also have the analytical tools to make sense of this high volume of data. So, returning to what Dimitris was saying earlier about the traditional lack of monitoring of the end-user experience, I think this example really illustrates that the old model was flying blind and reacting just to inbound incidents. Now we have the insight to change that fundamentally, taking a data-driven and evidence-led approach of acting on system events before any incidents are actually logged. We now know the traditional perspective was really limited, that end users suffer in silence, that we were dealing with just the tip of the iceberg. So I'd like to finish very briefly here with a quantified view of a real-world client outcome. 9 months ago, we had 183,000 crashes, 62,000 hangs. That's nearly 250,000 events negatively impacting end users in a single month. By last month, we had driven that down to a combined total of 90,000. Now, this is managing the whole estate, not just responding to today's incidents or doing problem management on last month's big hitters. This is a nearly 80% reduction in crashes, a 20% reduction in hangs, which reduced the negative end-user experiences by nearly 155,000 events a month. Now, if you think about that in terms of cost per minute, lost time, the financial benefits are obvious. The perception of corporate IT also changes massively when issues are dealt with without the end users even needing to call the desk. So at this point, I'd like to hand over to Dimitri again. Thank you.
Thank you, Alf. So let's now turn our focus to security. I think it's fair to say that security has become one of the highest concerns for all organizations out there. And what we see is that we need an enhanced security because prevention is just not enough, and there is a shift of the expectation in the market. So we go from I will or towards I will be hacked, and asking ourselves the question, what can we do after that, and what helps after that? So what we see is in the past we had we were facing like generic malware, so not specifically target, but this has now changed to zero-day malware and advanced persistent threats. So attacks are now much more specifically targeted at environments or certain tools or certain devices. And so you are vulnerable while your antivirus solution is not up to date. So spray and pray evolves to surgical type of attacks. So these attacks are really no longer aimed towards everyone, but they are now targeted and also repetitive. Yeah. So while we all agree that infection cannot be avoided, obviously what is very, very important that it must be rapidly detected and contained. So this is where the solution also can significantly boost the security levels that we have currently in the IT environment. So how do we do this? We are going to try to anticipate on the first occurrence. So the enhanced security features, in fact, that Getronics offers with our solution is that we can detect non-compliant applications and software. We can really show the effectiveness of your antivirus solution. We can find devices that are unprotected or underprotected, and that are facing malware threats. But we also can find unsafe software, all malware that has already been installed or that is lingering in the environment. Yeah. Very, very important, there is a possibility to identify multiple versions, so old vulnerable versions of the same software. So this has to do with patch management, obviously. We can identify devices that are bypassing approved routes to the internet, so going around your firewall, stuff like this. And we can even go down and show undesired user behavior. And this is not necessarily linked to the user themselves, but it may be a malware that is just starting and that is doing stuff that is outside of the user's control. Yeah. So when this happens, we can show you very, very rapidly the compromised end-user devices, so we can detain and avoid spread and recurrence. And we can identify, for example, possible suspicious activity from an endpoint level. So I think the business advantages are clear. We can have a very, very fast identification of compromised devices by monitoring their behavior and comparing it with baseline normal behavior. We can certainly look at optimizing the network traffic and routing and keeping an eye on the cost there. We can identify suspicious behavior from an end-user device point of view. So this means that this avoids or limits downtime and so we improve the end user productivity by reducing or avoiding that the end users cannot work or have difficulty to work efficiently. This really complements the possibilities of the traditional antivirus protection, because here we do focus on compliance. It is important to stress that the end-to-end integration of the tools and the experts that Geotronics have can deeply analyze all the issues that we find. So we have the experience to filter out the important issues out of the massive amount of end-user data we collect, and we can really define improvement actions together with the customers. So what we say within Geotronics is that this proactive workspace solution really transforms IT. This is a real game changer. We solidly believe that, because we can create a real end-to-end view starting from the end user's perspective. So this is unique. We can truly align the IT services with the business needs, because we are starting from the business perspective. And we can improve the service to the business, to the end users, because we can be smarter than the end users. Why? Because of all the big data and the monitoring capabilities. We will be smarter than the end users, and we will know their issues before they tell us the issues. So that's real proactivity. We will also uncover the underreported and the unknown issues. So we can move from reactive to proactive, but even a step further, we can even move to anticipate new issues before they occur. This also means, coming back to the security, that we can improve security where we are most vulnerable, so at the end users, because the end users and the end user devices are really the weakest link and the biggest IT security threat. And if we think about bringing your own device, this will only compound the risk. So this is all about security compliance and standardization.
In conclusion, the Geotronics Proactive Workspace solution offers a set of unique advantages. It can boost end-user satisfaction by showing real end-to-end view starting from the end-user perspective. Your service desk and IT department will be able to act on real facts and not only rely on user input. We can even go back in time, since we have a history log per user. This enables very quick incident resolution. We typically can do an analysis in 10 seconds, and a large percentage of the incidents can be solved in a proactive way directly. And with the automatic end-user baseline, the solution allows individual performance monitoring, so a personal baseline becomes the reality. There are no generic deltas here. We also provide a greatly enhanced real-time information by delivering interactive dashboards that provide a new way of reporting. We can integrate with major ITSM tools like ServiceNow, Remedy, Topdesk, and there are some others. So this can yield an automatic up-to-date inventory when feeding the collected end-user data into your CMDB. We also typically see 10 to 20% less end-user reported calls in 3 to 6 months' time. This means the solution provides a greatly enhanced problem management through automatic correlation of similar issues, and it also enables very fast root cause analysis. As a third benefit, the Proactive Workspace solution offers enhanced security services that avoid risks and lower costs. The enhanced security management really focuses on compliance management and detects issues before they spread and before they become a real problem. So suspicious and abnormal endpoint behavior is rapidly detected by comparing it with the individual end-user baseline. And this really complements traditional security solutions and gives you a comprehensive view of security vulnerabilities in your own environment. Thank you for your attention. This concludes the webinar, and we are now ready to answer your questions. To ask a question, just click on the blue Ask Question button. Thank you.
Okay, I hope everybody heard that well. We can now move to questions, and we've got the two experts still staying on the line. We have plenty of time for questions today. Don't forget, if you do want to ask a question, please click the blue button and put in your question there as it goes. So I think let me kick off with the first question I've got on the screen here in front of me, and that's, well, there's actually two things, and I'll put them together. So how does Getronics actually implement this solution, and how do we support it? So Dimitri, perhaps I can ask you to talk about that?
Yes, Martin. Hello, everyone. So how do we actually do this? We start off typically with a baseline, or that is also called a 360-degree audit, and that takes us roughly 3 to 6 days of installation and parameterization work to have this up and running in a customer environment. So it's a very, very short installation cycle, and the effort from the customer that is required is only half a day to a day. Then we allow the solution to gather the data for, let's say, 3 to 4 weeks. And after that, we can present a full 360-degree view on the customer's environment with lots of parameters and lots of findings that we then have analyzed, and that will be part of the report that we hand over to the customer. That is the first phase. It's important to remark that to allow Getronics to really effectively do this, that we must have access already in this phase to about 20 to 25% of the devices. So this is not a trial that we can run on, let's say, 50 or 100 devices. This is about big data capturing. The next phase is then that we roll out the full solution. And that means deploying a collector, so a small passive driver onto each and every end device. And then we will need 2 servers, an engine and a portal server, which are used to run this solution. The number of corrector is equal to the number of licenses, and so this will effectively then yield the proactive end-to-end incident management, but also really enhanced problem management and root cause analysis that will solve long-lasting issues. We can support this internationally and locally because we have already used it and implemented it to customers in Europe and Asia Pacific, and we've also integrated it into service desks, so this greatly enhances the functionality of those.
Okay, and we have another question coming in. So the question is actually, is your solution a new integrated help desk software? I think actually, Alf, do you want to pick up on that and just describe how we're using the software?
Yeah, sure thing. So basically the tool is really to enable advanced diagnostics and to sift through huge amounts of data. It's certainly used on the service desk. We integrate it with our ITSM tool so that the service desk agent, when they receive a call from an end user, will be able to see a kind of snapshot of the device health, and they can see whether there was any blue screens, application crashes, high memory utilization, or high CPU utilization, if there is hard drive errors and so on. And that obviously helps the service desk in diagnostics. However, that is not in any way the totality of the tool. Really, what the tool allows us to do is take a full view of the end user's consumption of all the different services. So that could be Exchange and Lync and so on, as well as using Excel locally or Office 365, Citrix-based services. And we can then basically baseline that and start looking for outliers, see people who have a negative service experience and so on, and start going after that from a kind of problem management perspective. So it is much more than just a help desk software as such. Okay, Martin?
Yes, I think I do have another question really, which drills into the support and the use of the data that we collect more. And Alf, do you want to talk a bit more about how you use the data to actually drill down into the problem management?
Certainly. So we would start out with a discovery phase where we basically take a baseline and understand what's going on in the client environment. And at the same time, we're integrating it into the services so they can start using it live. But we then basically do the outlier analysis that I was referring to. And we look at a very broad range of aspects there. And that can be, for example, specific devices which experience high number of failures, or a specific application which is driving a high number of failures across the entire end user estate. We can do a drill down to see, for example, that you have maybe 20 or 30 or 40 different binaries of a specific application like Excel, and we can then do the analysis to see that a specific version has 80% of the crashes, but only 20% of the user base. We can very rapidly assess and see which specific binaries are the most stable. Is there any particular plugins that are contributing to an issue, and so on. We can also look obviously at Windows components, so the operating system itself, and for example also things like network traffic, where we could very easily see if there was a deviation from the norm. We would track long-term data over months to see what is the typical consumption on a Monday morning or a Friday afternoon, and what is the average consumption per device in terms of megabits per second. And if then somebody starts, let's say, a 60 gigabyte upload to Dropbox and starts affecting the services for everybody else by basically saturating the network connection, then we will be able to immediately pinpoint that device, target it, and depending on the client's preferences, we can contact the end user directly or work through channels to get it addressed, to understand why is that traffic happening, is it appropriate for it to be in business hours, is it actually business use, and so on. We can look at a lot of things like security, malware, and so on, patch levels, and also, for example, looking at indicators of compromise, such as a single executable never seen before on the IT estate, which appears on a single device and is executed just once. We will know about that. So it really takes us completely into a completely different world in understanding the end user compute environment. Okay, I'll hand back to you, Martin.
Okay, thank you there. We've got another question which refers back to references and case studies. And Dimitri, do you want to pick up on where we're using it and the sort of institutions we're working with?
Yeah, sure, Martin. So some of the references that where we have actually deployed these services are a major international oil support company with 11,000 users even, some major financial institutions with several tens of thousands of users, also some insurance companies. We have a government IT support organization that actively uses it and has integrated it into its service desk, and we also use it internally on our premises. I think that's about it. There is a question here if we have any case studies that we might be able to provide, and the answer for that one is also yes, we can.
Thank you, Dimitri. That's good. I've got I've got one more question here, which is it's a question around return on investment and how fast you might realize the benefits of that. Dimitri, do you want to kick off with that one, and maybe we chip in?
Okay, so a question often heard, obviously. So basically there are two kinds of benefits. We can calculate the direct benefits, and the direct benefits would be that
we have obviously after typically 3 to 6 months, we see that we lower the number of incidents that affect the end users by a significant percentage. We typically see 15 to 25% in that range. So this linked to the problem management so that we solve the long-lasting issues. This means that the environment actually becomes stable and that the end users have more uptime and can be more productive if the environment reacts better and faster. These are, we have models for this, and we can easily show the benefits of these. We can calculate them together in the implementation or after the implementation. So that's the first category. I'm sure Alf can add to that and have another few examples. The second category are the ones, let's say, the non-direct or the indirect benefits, where you obviously can calculate or can try to calculate the improvement in quality and the improvement in, let's say, effectiveness and response time. And so when you eliminate wait times, etc., and you eliminate the number of crashes, this also represents a fairly big and important saving. Those are the two main categories.
Thanks, Dimitri. So I'll talk a little bit more on specific examples here. For example, one thing we were able to see through comparing expected versus actual network traffic was a fairly rapid identification of 1,400 clients that were misconfigured and bypassing load balancers and then causing excessive load on Exchange backend servers. And by addressing that, we were able to improve the service quality for a very large part of the user estate. We got really great drill down functionality where we can start with almost any kind of natural question, looking at crashes or hangs, looking at blue screens and hard reset, looking at, as I said before, high utilization and so on. And then we can drill down and we can really follow the evidence, if you like, looking for a particular red thread. Then we can get down to the individual machine where we can see a timeline of events. And this is really a game changer as well in not only the kind of PM style for management analysis, but also in service desk work, because it gives you a minute-by-minute, kind of blow-by-blow account of what's happened historically on that machine for as long as you've got data retention on the engines, and that could be several months. You can then see that a user started experiencing a crash, and just prior to that, there was an installation of a new plugin, perhaps a toolbar for Internet Explorer. Now, if that happened, maybe a week ago, and the user is phoning through to the service desk saying, I've got these slowdowns on the machine, I'm not sure when it started, you would end up spending half an hour trying to ask, various questions back and forth, and, what did you do on the machine before start? But they can't remember, it was a week ago. Here we have a tool that will give you the exact time and date of when it first happened, and exactly what happened just prior to it. And you can really, really find, time correlation is really easy to achieve through this view. From broader use as well, things like blue screens, for example. Previously, you might have one user phoning in and saying, I've got this recurring blue screen, it's a 0x116 video crash, and it keeps happening every week, for example. It's happened 3 or 4 times, not sure when it started. When we get an incident like that now, we can immediately see that this is not the only user affected. We can see there was 57 other people affected by the same issue. When we then understand what is the cause of it, we can then very rapidly also assess who else is exposed. Let's say it was linked back to a specific version of a device driver, a video device driver. We will then be able to see 100% that, you've got 57 who are affected, but there's another 900 systems with exactly the same driver, and they need to be patched. And we can then work with endpoint services or through change controls and so on to deploy it to the entire estate or just to targeted machines. Okay. So I think I'll hand back to Dimitri here.
Okay, thanks, Alf. I don't know if I need to add anything more. I don't know, Martin, maybe there is another question that is online?
Yeah, I think the one we should pick up on next is the question around, is this a an integrated help desk solution? Is it part of a tool set on that? Do you want to pick that up and talk to that, Dimitri?
Sure. So the answer is no, this is not a new integrated help desk tool or solution, but it does help to greatly enhance the service desk. Why? First of all, it does not replace any existing tool, but it complements the tool set that you have, and the benefit is that all the information will be present in this solution from an end-to-end view. So you now effectively have one single place where you can really end-to-end analyze the issues that you have. You have to compare this with the current situation where typically you have multiple tools that are accessed by different solver groups or by different experts, and to be able to analyze an issue, an incident that is occurring into an environment end-to-end. This means that you need to put 2, 3, 4 different people working in different tools together, and then they have to figure out the root cause and the problem and also the solution. This in practice proves to be hard in some occasions, and we think we all know, we all can have examples where in fact these solver groups play a bit of ping pong between themselves, between the different groups, and you have an issue, an effective incident ticket going to and fro. So this is now a thing of the past. We can really avoid this because we have, like I said, the single end-to-end view of a problem and of an issue in one and the same place. So the solution really gains value when we in fact integrate it with the existing ITSM tools like ServiceNow, like Remedy, and there are some others. So then you get a really, really effective service desk because of this integration, and this greatly enhances the problem-solving capability. So what Getronics has in fact done is integrate the call intake, the first line support, and even parts of the second line support. We have placed this into one group, and this is the group that really treats the problem, uses the next generation workspace solution to do this. And so in reality, we can solve first time right a lot more calls than we can do with the traditional approach. I think that's about it, Martin, unless there are other specific questions.
I think the only other question I have is, can we provide slides after the presentation? And the answer to that is yes. We'll provide slides to everybody registered after this. The other point I'd like to make is, first of all, thank you everybody for listening today to the webinar, and to Alf and Dimitri. And our email addresses are on there. So if you wish to ask anything else, or either to Alf or Dimitri or to myself afterwards, then please feel free. But at this time, I don't have any more questions, so I'll close out. Thank you very much, everybody.